Lesson 23. In the last lesson, we learned about direct objects and how to locate them in an English sentence. Now in this lesson, we're going to learn how to do it in Latin. As I said in a previous lesson, in an English sentence, a lot of the meaning is communicated by word order. In other words, if you switch the order of the words around in an English sentence, you can really change the meaning of the sentence. But in Latin, what we do is we change the endings of words to show their function. So in Latin, we're going to put different endings, distinctive endings, on the ends of words. And so when we see those endings on the words, that's going to show us what their function is in the sentence. So it's a little bit different from English. Instead of relying on word order, we're going to rely on endings to show us the individual functions of individual words. So as I say in the top paragraph here, the regular form of nauta that you are familiar with is just that, nauta, N-A-U-T-A. But when the word nauta is going to be the direct object in a sentence, we're going to change the ending to reflect that it is the direct object. And the ending we're going to put on it is am. So instead of nauta, it's going to be nautam. So if you have a sentence and the verb is an action verb, and nauta is the direct object, then we change the ending to nautam. And when I say an action verb, what I mean is verbs where someone is actually doing some kind of action, not a verb of being or existing, like I am or you are, things like that. And as I say here in the top paragraph, those verbs of existing or verbs of being, very often they're called linking verbs. With a linking verb or a verb of being, no one's really doing any action. They're just sort of being or existing. So when the verb is a verb of being or existing, we will not use the am ending for nautam. And I'll give you an example. If you say, I am a sailor, in a sentence like that, the word sailor is not the direct object. In a sentence like that, the word sailor is what you call a predicate. And so in Latin, if you had a sentence that said, I am a sailor, then the word there for sailor would be nauta, not nautam. But if the verb is an action verb, and then sailor is the direct object, then you would change the ending to am and make it nautam. So let's work our way down through the lesson and look at some examples. Let's look at our first example here, the one that says, the nauta saw an island. So here in this sentence, I'm sort of mixing together Latin words and English words. The sentence is mostly English, but with one Latin word thrown in, and that is nauta. So I'm sort of mixing words together just to help explain this concept. So here in this sentence, the nauta saw an island. And as I explain here in the text, in this sentence, the word sailor or nauta is the subject of the sentence. So since it's the subject, it keeps its normal form, the form that you are familiar with, and that is nauta. In our next example, we have a slightly different situation. I saw a nautam. In this sentence, we have an action verb. The subject is I, and the verb is saw. So saw is an action verb. You're doing something to the sailor. And so we need the direct object form of nauta, which is nautam. And so you see nautam will have the am ending there. Let's look at our third example. The man is a nauta. Now in this example we have man is the subject, is the verb, and nauta is the predicate nominative, we call it. And as you can see, the verb is a verb of being or existing. And since it's a verb of being or existing, we're not going to use the direct object form of nauta, because nauta is not a direct object. It's a predicate nominative. So again, it will keep its normal form, which is nauta. So let's review. When nauta is the subject of a sentence, it keeps its normal form. when it's the predicate nominative of a sentence coming after a linking verb or verb of being, it keeps its normal form. But when the word nauta is the target of the action of an action verb, then you use the direct object form of it, which is nautam. So in our exercises that start at the bottom of page 27, we have two goals. The first goal is to fill in the blank with one of two words, either nauta or nautam. Then, once we've done that, we have to give the reason why we chose that word. And there are three reasons to choose from. 1, because it's the subject of the sentence. 2, because it's the direct object of the sentence. Or 3, because it's a predicate nominative. So let's go through these exercises together. In number 1, I is the subject and saw is the verb. And saw, our verb, is an action verb. It's not a verb of being or existing. It's an action verb, and the target of the action is the sailor. So in English, it would be, yesterday I saw a sailor down at the dock. And so to fill that blank in with the correct Latin word, either nauta or nautam, we need to select nautam because in this sentence, sailor is the direct object. And the reason why we chose it, as I just mentioned, is because it's the direct object. Okay, in number 2, the subject is I, and the verb is am, and then the blank needs to be filled in. So I is the subject, and am is the verb. And as you can see, am is a linking verb. It's a verb of being or existing. So in English, if you say, I am a sailor, then the word sailor there would be a predicate nominative. So the correct answer for number 2 is nauta, and the reason is because in that sentence it's a predicate nominative. Number 3, you can tell by looking at number 3 that the blank that's to be filled in is the subject of the sentence. A sailor steered the ship into the harbor. So as we learned earlier, if sailor is the subject of the sentence, then in Latin that would be nauta. Nauta is for when it's the subject of a sentence, and nautam is for when it's the direct object. So here, the blank needs to be filled in with nauta, and the reason is because it's the subject of the sentence. Number 4, I is the subject, and hired is the verb. And the verb, hired, is an action verb. And so sailor here is the direct object. So nautam is the answer, and the reason is because it's the direct object. Number 5, a sailor walked toward the ship. In that sentence, the word sailor is the subject. So the Latin answer for number 5 would be nauta, and the reason would be because it's the subject. And it's the same case with number 6. The sailor is very strong. Sailor is the subject, so it needs to be nauta, and the reason there is because it's the subject. Number 7, I is the subject, and watched is the verb. And so sailor here would be the direct object, because watched is an action verb. So the correct answer is nautam, and the reason is because it's the direct object. Number 8, he is the subject, and is the verb. And as you have probably guessed by now, is a linking verb, a verb of being, and so the blank will be basically a predicate. So he is a sailor. In that situation, since it's a predicate nominative, you need to fill it in with nauta. Number 9, you is the subject, and helped is the verb. So if you helped the sailor, that makes the sailor the direct object, because helped is an action verb. So here in this sentence, the correct answer is nautam, and the reason is because it's the direct object. Number 10, I is the subject, and will be is the verb. That's a verb of being or existing. So if you're saying, I will be a sailor, then in that sentence, the word sailor would be a predicate, and so in Latin, we would need the word nauta for that. I will be a nauta someday, And the reason is because it's a predicate nominative.